All right, Garrett Nussmeier. I've seen him on the board as a second or third highest favorite for the Heisman Trophy. Now, most people across college football may be slightly checked out on LSU because they fell out of contention to a certain extent. Although I think it was kind of under the radar that even late in the season they had a pathway to the SEC championship game pretty late in the season, more so than most people thought. But 4,000 yards, 29 touchdowns, did throw 12 picks. Uh, he's that's a high touting of his Heisman potential is just behind Arch Manning on most boards.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons, Mark, that you're going to see Nussmeier and every LSU quarterback high on Vegas odds is because they're just not going to get bitten again. They got bitten by Joe Burrow back in 2019, and then they got bitten by Jaden Daniels, where they had these parabolic seasons. And the odds makers just aren't going to let it happen again because when you look at LSU, there's a few things and it's so foreign. I mean, Mark, when you and I started doing these chats, it was still when LSU was in the prehistoric ages in as far as passing the football. That's just not the reality anymore. I mean, it's almost like when Lincoln Riley was at Oklahoma, just rest assured whoever the quarterback was going to be at or near the top of Heisman odds because of the system they run. So LSU's got a ton of wide receivers. They're going to spread it out. They're going to sling it around. Joe Sloan, who's the quarterback's coach, is also the offensive coordinator. Nuss is a fifth-year senior, second-year starter, the leading returning passer in college football. So if you assume LSU has a path to the playoff, which they do, and you're returning a 4,000-yard passer, all those ingredients are there for Garrett to be in that conversation. It's really just going to be a matter of if the team can hold up. Like the numbers will be there, Mark, for Garrett, provided he stays healthy. It's really just a matter of if this is a team that can reach its team goals and be pushing toward a playoff in November, and if so, Garrett will be right in that Heisman conversation.
Well, yeah, they've moved past the prehistoric times, but
Yeah,
running back is still important. So, and they must be pretty loaded when you consider Brian Kelly says to John Emery, basically, you know, all the best, but
right.
we're good here. And I don't know that a lot of people, again, across college football for LSU is being under the radar as LSU can possibly be across the nation, know about Caden Durham and what he was able to do down the stretch. And then you got the five-star Harlem Berry. You've got Caleb Jackson coming back. It looks to be a stacked deck at running back.
Yeah, the John Emery thing was interesting. John entered the portal last year. And one name that you didn't mention that people won't really know is Trey Holly, but Trey Holly was arrested for in a shooting incident in his hometown. He has staunchly maintained his innocence. Um, the most severe charges have been dropped. He's maintained he was not involved at all. That goes to trial in July. So, but Trey Holly is Louisiana's all-time high school leader in rushing yards and rushing touchdowns. So that's another guy on the team that's waiting for a legal situation to unravel, and if it does, he'll be back with the team as well. But all that to say, Mark, last year John Emery was in the portal, but when the Trey Holly situation unfolded and they were short a scholarship running back, that's when they opened the door for Emery to return, and then he suffered another torn ACL, which was unfortunate. But yeah, they're stacked at running back, and you brought up Caden Durham, probably the best player nobody really knows, because LSU was off the radar for much of last year, but he exploded as a freshman, ran for nearly 1,000 yards. It really started in the game at South Carolina early in the first month of the season when he really paced LSU offensively to that comeback win in Columbia. He's a special back, and the other thing too, Mark, Caden Durham played the bulk of last season with a steel plate in his cleat because he dislocated two toes in a game against South Alabama. I can't imagine how painful that would be to play through dislocated toes when you play running back, stopping and starting and cutting. And so for him to have the type of season he did with that limitation makes it even more remarkable. But that's a young guy that a lot of people I think are going to get to know around the country.
All right, Matt, I'm going to go to another level of under the radar. Mississippi State, definitely under the radar last year, but their quarterback, Michael Van Buren, I finally caught up with him in the Egg Bowl when, of course, if you're going to watch college football, that's the only game you could watch. So I'm watching him, and I'm impressed with him. He's quite an athlete. It's kind of interesting that he would make the move from Mississippi State as the starter to be a backup, but how much do you think he factors into the offense? Obviously, provides a somewhat veteran presence as a backup if needed, as a stopgap or to take over for the season. God forbid, nobody wants to hear that. But your thoughts about him and possibly where he could factor into some packages or something like that?
I'm not sure I believe that's going to happen. I think that was a very expensive insurance plan for this season. Because remember, both AJ Swan and Ricky Collins, LSU's backups, both left in the portal. So the only scholarship quarterbacks were Nussmeier and then Colin Hurley, who was an early enrollee and just finished his freshman season. And Colin was in a car wreck. He's back home in Jacksonville. He's not going through spring football. So Garrett Nussmeier, and then you had Bryce Underwood committed who flipped. So you did not sign a quarterback in this 2025 class. So Mark, really, until you got Van Buren out of the portal, the only scholarship quarterback you had on the roster for spring was Garrett Nussmeier. So they had to go do something to add a veteran presence there. And I think it's an insurance plan for this season. Um, and I think Van Buren in 2026 will have the opportunity to compete for the starting job. But why would he leave Mississippi State? Well, Blake Shapen returns to Mississippi State. It's probably going to be the starter there. And LSU was spending in the portal. Mark, I mean, I was told that Michael Van Buren got just under $500,000 in NIL money for this one season in Baton Rouge. So it's a pretty good reason to leave Starkville and come to Baton Rouge.
And I understand the quarterback situation was so depleted, they grabbed Juwan Johnson as a running back who was a high school quarterback, and he's going to be taking some reps there in the spring.